Hello everyone! Today I am going to be doing a video that I've been wanting to make for quite some time. I am going to be ranking every single Eurovision winner of the last 30 years that the contest has been held. I'm continuing a series that I started this year on my channel in lieu of me turning 30 years old in April, in which I count down my ranking of the last 30 awarded acts of such and such. So for example, I already have done this for the Grammy Song of the Year recipients. I have ranked the last 30 years of those awards being given out, and I have also done this for the Grammy Song of the Year award. I'm tying it to music always, as I do on this channel. And then in lieu of continuing with this, I wanted to also, because I do cover Eurovision quite a lot on this channel, I do want to also continue for the Eurovision winning songs of the last 30 years. That'll be, of course, from 1993 to 2023. I was born in 1993, so I'm starting with every year that I have been alive onward. So it's a neat way to kind of categorize it. Obviously, the Eurovision Song Contest has been on for a lot longer than that. Eurovision dates back to the 50s. And so if I really wanted to rank all 60-some songs, that would be a whole long video. That would be twice the length of this one. And, to be honest, I don't know if I'm ever going to get that far into it. There's so much history there and so much music to listen to. And besides Waterloo and Ne partez pas sans moi, which is Celine Dion's winning song from 1988, I don't know if I'm ever going to get that familiar with old school Eurovision. I'm sure I will do a little bit more of a deep dive into it more over time, but I want to focus on the era that I've been alive. And so in preparation for this video, I made sure to really familiarize myself with all 30 winning entries. There's actually going to be exactly 30, because normally it would be 31 if you do the math. If you do 10 to 10, there's actually 11 entries in there, because we're counting 2023 and we're starting in 1993. If you were to do the math, it would actually be 31 entries. But because of 2020, the year that Eurovision was not held due to, I don't know, a certain thing that happened. Let's not talk about it. We actually have 30 even entries to talk about. It is really tragic that 2020 was the only year since the inception of Eurovision in the 1950s that Eurovision was not held in some form or another. And there was no crowned winning song. And so that's what we got to deal with. So obviously I will not be covering any winners or presumed winners from that year. That could be a whole other video. I started talking about Eurovision more on this channel around 2018. So that's when I really started to familiarize myself with all of the songs, not just the few big ones that started to make like a lot of waves on social media or whatever. In the past, before that, I'd only really heard of some of the winning songs. I had heard some of these winners before when they actually won. First time I was really exposed to Eurovision was back in 2009 when the grand final was being held in Russia. So I did watch the grand final performance of Fairy Tale, the winning song. I do have a little bit of memory of that, but I really didn't get into the contest until later college. And then once I started making this channel, I started really diving into it and going into every song, listening to all the entries, talking about them. If you followed my channel, you'll see lots of stuff in the Eurovision playlist, which I'll link in the description, which has a lot of, rankings of all the contestants of certain years in the last 4 or 5 years of the contest. So pardon me if my knowledge is a little spotty on 2017 through 1993. 2018 is where I can pretty much tell you every single entry, and I knew it, and I've listened to it, and onwards. But before that, it was piecemeal. 2013, 2015, 2017, I'm fairly familiar with. Before 2015, not so familiar with. And then definitely before 2009, I had no clue. So this has been a real learning journey for me, going back and listening to all these winning songs. But I do need to preface that, a lot of these songs, I won't have context for what could have won. What was the runner-up? I could look it up, but it wouldn't mean anything to me because I haven't listened to those songs. So I've chosen to sort of go into this blind. Obviously, for certain years, more recent years, I know the full context of who came in second place, who came in third, who came in last, who even qualified. But for most years I'm going to be covering here, I don't have all that background info. And at some point, I'm going to familiarize myself with at least the last 15 years of Eurovision, because I do feel like, especially from 2010 onwards, I want to listen to all the entries because I want to film a video where I sort of rank those from the last 14, 15 years. But I'm not at that point yet. I'm getting to it. I'm slowly familiarizing myself. I just did 2012 recently. I listened to all the songs in 2012, and I did 2011 and 2010. Those years I'm a little more familiar with, so I do know kind of who came in what order and all of the contestants. But there are a lot of years, like 2013 to 2015. I know 2013 and 2014, I still only know the winning songs. Anyway, so there's a lot of, stuff that diehard Eurovision fans will know, but I've decided to go into this video kind of completely blind, and I'm just basically judging most of these songs based on the songs themselves. I'm not judging on, the politics of the contest and who should have won and who came in second place and who was robbed because this one won. I'm sure if I went in with that knowledge, I might rank certain entries lower because I'm jaded about it. But because I don't know all the other entries competing, I don't feel that passionately one way or another. I'm just judging the song based on, if I were to only listen to this song, what do I think of it, and how does it rank amongst all of the 30 other winners that I'm going to be talking about in this video. So I just wanted to let that be known as a precursor for some people who I'm sure would be wondering why I'm not mentioning the runners-up and all that, the runner-ups and stuff. So yeah, without much more preamble, let's get into this. It was kind of hard to rank these 30 songs, but there was one very clear bottom. And let's get into that, shall we? Coming in at the very bottom, we have, this breaks my heart because this is a country that I have visited and I am so fond of. It's a country I want to visit again, and it's a country I am rooting for at Eurovision because I think they have a very strong music scene, a lot to offer, and a lot of heart. But Estonia, the only time Estonia ever won the Eurovision contest was in 2001 with everybody. Tanel Padar, Dave Benton, and 2XL. So this is kind of fittingly the bottom song. I don't think many people would disagree here about its placement. This is the only song that is currently not streaming on Apple Music or Spotify out of all 30 other winners that I'm going to cover in this video. I think that's very telling. I don't think this song is good enough to really be considered on the Eurovision Hits playlist. So it not making a streaming debut is not really that surprising to me. It's a real shame, again, like I said, because Estonia is a country that has delivered a lot of quality in the past and continues to do so. They joined in the 90s, but unfortunately, the one time they won is probably one of the times that the country really shouldn't have won that did. I don't know the 2001 Song Contest dynamic, so I don't know if the second place was truly robbed or not. Maybe it was a weak year, and this truly was the best that was on offer. I find that very hard to believe. If this truly was the best that was on offer in 2001, then boy, would that have been the worst year ever. This is giving karaoke bar. There's almost no staging. The whole outfit styling, it doesn't look prepared. It does not look polished. That's not to say that I don't think there's some vocal talent on display. I just think that this is the wrong sort of package for what I think Eurovision should be, which should be something a little elevated. It can be fun and it can be a simpler song melodically, but it needs to have some elevation. And there's just not a lot here that's screaming effort. This is screaming very low budget, fly by the seat of your pants, and have someone come in and just, riff on the mic for a few minutes and call it a song. And it is just, it's kind of Chuck E. Cheese. Like it's very cheesy and corny listening to the lyrics. Not a fan. And I really don't think people are going to be that offended by me placing it at the very bottom. But unlike my 30th pick, my 29th is going to be very controversial. And, this whole video is going to be, let's be real, when has my ranking kind of series ever not been? My 29th and my second least favorite Eurovision winner is going to Finland in 2006 with Hard Rock Hallelujah by Lordi. If you know my channel, you know that I am not a heavy metal rock fan. I can appreciate rock music when it has a strong melody and when it is executed in a way that I think is, deserving of accolade. And not to say that Hard Rock Hallelujah, it's not that it's performed badly. I just don't think that this song is taking itself seriously enough. And I also don't think that for a rock entry, it's doing anything for my ears. The styling is memorable. This is the only and arguably most rock song that's won Eurovision in the last 30 years. I have a feeling that there aren't any other entries from pre-1993 that are going to be this style of music either. Just knowing the trends of music in the 80s and 70s, I don't really see acts like this breaking through into a Eurovision Song Contest winning stage. But in 2006, people were craving something. I believe this was the year, this was during the period of time where there were no juries deciding the final winners. It was all public vote. And I've seen it used as an argument against the all public televote rule for finals. In the 2000s, they saw a string of entries that I believe a lot of people may view as not deserving because there wasn't quite the musicianship on display that usually the jury is looking for. Again, there's a bit of a jump in quality. It's not nearly as bad as everybody. This does feel like a package that I would see at Eurovision and expect to see, especially from a Nordic country. They really do like their gritty heavy metal. But this is not an entry that I feel compelled to listen to outside of the context of making this video. It is not my kind of music. And compared to the one other slightly more heavy rock song that we have as a winner for the contest in recent times, I don't really feel like this song is something I'd really want to take seriously beyond being some sort of camp joke. I know that this song is poking fun at Eurovision and poking fun at itself, and that can be done artfully, but there comes a point where it becomes too much joke and not enough prestige. And so for me, Hard Rock Hallelujah, the costuming, it's a little too on the nose. So I'm not really a fan. I'm sorry for people who love it, but if you know me, you know I'm not a really big fan of heavy metal. I don't know what else to tell you.
As long as I'm breathing, there is not a limit to what I can dream. Yes, I get so.
Coming in at the 28th place, we have Russia with Believe. This is the only time Russia has won in the 30 years I'm going to be covering in this video. And boy, is this a generic power ballad by a pretty boy. These kinds of songs, they definitely get through because of appeal from certain types of audiences, digestibility, charisma, which I would imagine was probably very much on display, seeing Dima Bilan perform this song called Believe, a very generic platitude of a title, which, is emblematic of the song's overall structure lyrically and melodically, I would argue. Again, competent vocals on display, but nothing that screams Eurovision winner to me. I think that I've heard it said, and 2008 is actually one of the earliest years that I have pretty much fully digested every entry for. And I've heard it said that 2008 is one of the weakest years in recent memory of Eurovision. And it was the year of the joke entry. This was the year of Irland 12 points and the song in a completely mythical language by Belgium, which I actually love. Oh Ulysses is one of my favorites from 2008, but it didn't even qualify. And I can see how in a year like 2008, a song like this, which is very safe and middle of the road, but still kind of endearing to audiences, and it's not really a joke entry, so you can say, hey, we gave it to some quality and prestige here over something silly. But I honestly feel like that was the year you should have just given a silly song the crown. Let them have their fun so that we could move on to something a little more serious moving forward. But yeah, no, not a winner I feel that drawn to. It's a forgettable year of Eurovision. I can't even remember who came in second place, and I honestly probably don't feel that strongly about whoever did, because the only song I feel that strongly about for 2008 is Oh Ulysses, and that song did not qualify. It's tragic. In that year, it should have.
Fly on the wings of love, my baby, fly, reaching the stars.
Coming in at 27, we have Fly on the Wings of Love by Brodreen Olsen. So Denmark's win in 2000. I think there's a big jump in quality from the bottom three that I just talked about and the remaining entries. But I would still say at the end of the day that this is a forgettable entry. It's feel good. It's a little country. But it also has some Australian vibes, which for an entry from Denmark is, not what you quite expect. But I don't know if there's some Outback ties to the group, the duo performing, but it's given that vibe in the production with a little bit of a new age twist. And I could see how it would have done really well in the landscape of the late 90s, where music was at the time, like pop music. It's perfectly fine. It is perfectly safe. But at the end of the day, we're ranking it against 30 other songs. And so at first I thought, oh, there's no way this is going in the bottom 5. But the more I started doing the ranking, the more I was like, actually, yeah, I don't really think this is quite to the level of the songs we're about to talk about. And really, there's one other song that I really feel strongly about being not as strong as the others. And that's going to go to my 26th spot. Which is going to go to Turkey. Turkey's win in 2003. Sertab Erener, Every Way That I Can. One of the girly bops that won in a row, in a line in the 2000s that I think a lot of pop Eurovision fans really adore. But this is the one that really kind of, I don't know, for my ear is not really serving or doing much. It's a Gwen Stefani sounding melody and vocal delivery from Sertab. It definitely is giving Love Angel Music Baby, circa 2003, 2004. And I could see how it would be a hit for people who are wanting a bubblegum pop track. But to me, this one lacks immediacy in the chorus. It lacks a real place to really let her vocals shine through. I feel like the chorus is the weakest part of it, and it really drags the whole song down. And in the performance of it with the staging, again, it's just not coming together in the way that I think some of these other, pop diva entries do. It's not really allowing her to showcase her vocals. It's all a little bit mid. Mid is a good way to describe it. I'm sorry if there are some real, Every Way That I Can fans out there, but this is just not an entry I feel compelled to come back to and listen to.
I wanna be the sunshine in your arms. I wanna be the light from shooting stars. I wanna be the greeniest little lights.
And it's a similar story for 2002's entry, I Wanna by Marie N. This was Latvia's first ever win, following Estonia the year before. The Baltics were sort of given these wins, and they were relatively new to the contest, and neither of them have won since. And as a matter of fact, Latvia has had a horrendous qualifying streak, one of the worst of any of these countries participating in the 2010s into present day. But I Wanna is slightly stronger than Every Way That I Can because it's like a kind of Latin inspired. It's got Latin horns, Latin instrumentals, and dance influences. That also kind of is in styling, channeling, early, she's definitely channeling Madonna, I think, in that time period, because I think Madonna was kind of rocking the suit with the hat. That was something at mid 2000s Madonna was definitely doing. And somewhat Britney Spears as well, Justin Timberlake. It's in that conversation. It's the kind of song that just sounds so Eurovision. I don't know how to explain it, but, dated, cheap, silly pop. Pop that doesn't mean anything, that feels like it's Google translated with the lyrics, because the lyrics are very vague or very kind of silly or pointless when translated into English. Yeah, it's one of those kinds of songs. And again, I hope it's not that controversial that it's not a song that does very much for me. At number 24, we have In Your Eyes by Niamh Kavanagh. My birth year entry, this song performed after I was born to win the Eurovision Song Contest in 1993. Niamh Kavanagh is a veteran of Eurovision. She returned in 2010 with a much better song, can I say, than what was on Fair in 1993. I believe she also came back and competed one other year, but I can't quite remember when. So she has, been at it. She is definitely, if Ireland wants to correct its non-qualifying streak, an artist they should look to. But I think In Your Eyes, I know it's so dated and that makes it hurt, that hurts against it because I think at the time, it has a Barbra Streisand, Michael Bolton, late 80s, kind of early 90s, schmaltzy aesthetic. It's whimsically romantic and it does showcase her vocals. This is probably the first song of really stellar vocals that are showcased wonderfully. And I think that the studio cut doesn't even pay homage to the vocals in the way that the live performance does. I think that it is a little harsh putting her this low, but I just think it's a little bit more forgettable melodically. And it is a bit dated in the recording sound and quality and just in the style. But Niamh Kavanagh deserves respect for, delivering for Ireland when Ireland was on top, which they certainly are not these days. At number 23, we have Toy by Netta. This was the 2018 winner. It's also known as the Chicken Song or the Cluck Cluck Song. I'm not surprised that this is in the bottom 10. It was sort of the big joke entry of the last few years. When Eurovision has largely been being taken very seriously, there are still entries that come through these days that, are at the time kind of a phenomenon. They're like a meme, but then they fizzle really quick. And I think Netta is a perfect example of that. I see very few people kind of coming back and thinking Netta deserved that win. In fact, I think a lot of people roll their eyes when they see Netta come out on stage during all of the more recent iterations of the contest when they've had recent winners come back. Because it does feel a little bit like an anomaly that she won in the first place. Not to mention the political, implications of having Israel host at the time was and still is controversial. And of course, her calling out and saying that the show will be held in Jerusalem in 2019, which of course was never going to happen. Never going to happen. But yes, I actually a soft spot for it as a silly, experimental, feminist message pop song. I don't have a problem with it because there is some serious messaging underneath it all. It is definitely making a point and a statement wrapped up in tongue-in-cheek, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's one of the only times we've had a more plus-size contestant win the show, especially a woman. So that's kind of a big deal. And at the end of the day, it's not the worst thing in the world. Yes, Cyprus should have won. Fuego should have won. Let's be real. But I don't know. We can't cry over spilled milk. But it's a bit of a lightning in the bottle. I don't know how Netta pulled that off, but she did. At number 22, we have Take Me to Your Heaven by Charlotte Nilsson. This is one of the many Sweden wins you're going to see in this video. Tied with Ukraine and Ireland, they have the most that you will see represented in this video with 3 wins each. In 1999, they won, and I hear ABBA songwriting styles in this song. It does feel like ABBA wrote it. It's performed by an ABBA tribute singer. It's a little bit dated in the way the staging obviously was not the same in the 90s, so you can't really judge it unfairly by today's standards, but, it is something to go by now. It does read dated, but it also has a catchy hook. One of the catchiest, actually. It was the one that was the hardest to get out of my head after I dived into all the songs I never heard before for this video. Gives good vibes and, the kind of song you kind of expect Sweden to send, especially at that time. At 21, Ziti I Bioni by Måneskin, arguably one of the last more recent mega world pop star sort of breakouts. We hadn't seen that since, ABBA and Celine Dion, and to some extent Katrina and the Waves, which we'll get to in a bit. But most other entries that won the contest didn't really see success outside of their own country or some niche European markets. But Måneskin, took off in 2021 after winning the Eurovision Song Contest, and I still feel like they deserved the win, even though I would have personally given it to Switzerland. But, it is what it is. This is an example of a heavier rock song done right for me, because even though it is really not my kind of music, I fully get on board with what they're serving. Maybe it helps that I don't understand the language, so I don't have to really feel like the lyrics are holding the song back like I do Hard Luck Hallelujah. But it doesn't matter. I feel like they just have so much more energy, so much more presence and artistic merit to what they're serving, and is the other big rock winner. And I don't mind seeing rock winners when they're tasteful, and I feel like Ziti Bioni's tasteful for a rock winner. And so I still am not going to rank them as high as I know other people would, but I want to give it respect. But it is still in the bottom. It's still in the bottom third, and I do feel a little bad about that. But my personal taste isn't everyone else's.
You were one, once I'm transformed, once I'm reborn. I will rise like a phoenix.
Speaking of another one that's going to be a little lower than some people would probably place. At 20, we have Rise Like a Phoenix by Conchita Wurst. The first ever performer, well, she wasn't the first performer to really bend gender. We did have Dana International in 1998, but it was a big deal to have a drag queen present, on stage. Conchita, wearing a full wig and makeup, but also in a dress, but sporting a beard. It had all the conservative governments in Europe crazy. It had them all going nuts. Unfortunately, it kind of is a big reason why Turkey has no longer returned to the contest since around that time. It's partly that, but not to say that Conchita didn't win. And this, I'll admit, 2014 is one of the only recent contests that I know nothing about. I can't name another entry from that year. I completely slept on 2014, so please forgive me. I'm going back and doing my homework, and I'll get to this year. But I find it hard to believe that this was the strongest song on offer. I think it was a lot of the star power of Conchita plus the message behind it, because the message is intrinsically tied with the presentation. This is a overcoming adversity anthem. And so being, a queer individual on stage and making that statement, it was so important. Even for Eurovision, which is already very queer and very gay, it still is revolutionary, especially 10 years ago. So I give it its props for that, but it's not for me. It's very Broadway, it is very show tune. And you know how I feel about those kind of entries. They can start to grate on me. They can start to all sound the same. It sounds a little bit more like a chance to show off your resume vocally for Broadway than it does to sound like any sort of melody that really clings to me. But I give it its props for what it is, and what it represents, but it's middle of the road for me.
I'm running, I'm scared tonight. I'm running, I'm scared of life. I'm running, I'm scared of leaving. 'Cause I adore.
At number 19, we have Running Scared by Elle and Nikki. This was Azerbaijan's only win to date in 2011. Azerbaijan is a country I don't think a lot of us would have expected to have won the contest so quickly. They're such a, relatively kind of small country that is not even that tied to Europe in a lot of ways. It's a little bit more tied to the Middle East in a lot of ways than others, even Israel. But Azerbaijan, it's all right. In 2011, I'm a little more familiar with the 2011 contest. I probably would not have given the win to this song. But seeing the performance, maybe listening to the studio cut, I was kind of like, really? But seeing the performance, I kind of can't help but be endeared to it. It's not the strongest vocal on offer here. And so the melody is is doing what it can, but the vocal is a little weak, especially for a winner. And I think that a lot of people would rank this in definitely bottom 5 territory. But because I am a sucker for well-produced pop music, I do sort of have a little bit more of an affinity for it over some of the more dated entries. So that's why I'm putting it up here. This is quite generous of a spot for it, I admit. But I don't know. I've grown to like it.
Rock and roll kids, rock and roll is all we did, and listening to those songs on the radio.
Number 18, Rock and Roll Kids, another Ireland win, back-to-back, 1993 and 1994. The last time there has ever been two back-to-back winners year after year was Ireland. And Rock and Roll Kids by Charlie McGettigan and Paul Harrington is one of the most subdued songs that's ever won the contest in this 30-year period that I'm covering. And I appreciate that because I do think you need that, dynamic. You need the big bombastic songs, but you also need the piano ballads that are much more about the lyrics and much more about the vocal being less produced and all of the theatrics that go into Eurovision. It's a soulful, kind of melancholic, reflective, nostalgic piano ballad that kind of listening to, at first you might not think it's much, but you get swept up in the melody, and before you know it, you're having the same sort of reminiscing and romanticizations of the past as they're singing about. It's a transportative melody, and I definitely think, although it wouldn't jump out immediately as a winner song, I'm sure for me, if I was looking at the context of all the other contestants, looking at it objectively amongst all these other entries, I'm happy with it being a winner, and I feel comfortable putting it at about middle of the pack at spot number 18. At number 17, we have the UK's one entry that is from 1997. This is Love Shine a Light by Katrina and the Waves. I was not familiar with the name of this group, but I had no idea that the hit song Walking on Sunshine, whoa, is by this group. And so actually they kind of shot to fame through winning Eurovision. I believe Walking on Sunshine did come out after, if not maybe right before. I'm not sure. Maybe they already were pretty famous. But anyway, they're another band to have seen some serious, at least US chart success outside of Eurovision. But Love Shine a Light is not Walking on Sunshine, all right? It's not quite as strong, but it's certainly middle of the road, inoffensive. For the UK, it's pretty good quality. I mean, if we look at UK's entries of the last 30 years, it is... it's definitely a triumph for them, obviously bringing it home for the last time the UK has ever really done that. I know the UK hosted this year, but they didn't technically win in 2022. So they're still waiting on their next win. But again, don't know anything else about the other songs competing in 97, but I would have been fine with this being a winner because at the end of the day, it's similar to Take Me to Your Heaven, a unifying song that can get the crowd going, but it's just a little bit more interesting on stage as a performance than Fly on the Wings of Love.
If I lose my mind, I'm already cursed.
At number 16, we're right in the middle here. We have Fairy Tale by Alexander Rybak. This is, as I mentioned earlier, my first exposure to Eurovision, unless you count hearing Waterloo when I was a kid, but I didn't know what I was listening to. I remember being 16 years old and seeing this handsome man, playing the fiddle, and then all these men doing like push-ups on stage, and like it was all high energy and kind of sexy, and it was very European and whimsical. And I was like, okay, I sort of see what this whole Eurovision thing is about. Because Alexander Rybak is a very handsome performer. And the song, he has a remarkable vocal. He has a unique presence and charisma that also melds well with the fiddle playing. And I think that really elevates the package. And I can see why this swept people away. And I'm not entirely sure if the public vote was the sole thing that sent it through, or if the televote had come back in 2009. But I could have seen the juries actually give this some love as well, not just the public. This is a song that would have pleased both, I'm sure. So it's not necessarily something to phone home about, but it's unique enough and special in its own way that I feel like it deserves to go, again, relatively high on this list, but we're still kind of in the middle. Arcade by Duncan Lawrence is a song I want to like more, but I've always felt a little underwhelmed by it. Maybe if it didn't explode the way it does, because the explosion feels a bit like a cop-out to sort of create an anthem to fill stadiums instead of maybe meditating a lot more on some serious, earnest emotion. But at the same time, I'm used to it and I do appreciate the expansiveness of the song and how it grows. But for some reason, the melody has never really struck a chord for me in the same way that other ballads have. And so I dock it some points there. Again, I'm still being pretty generous with 15th place. We're getting to the songs that I don't have as much negatives to say about. I just have songs I like more. And at the end of the day, this is about objectivity. What song do I want to listen to more than the other? You know? And Arcade is not really one I come back to listening too often.
Viva Maria, viva Victoria, Afrodita. Viva la diva, viva Victoria, Cleopatra.
1998, Israel won with Dana International. And Dana International is the first transgender woman to ever win the song contest. Dana International also submitted a song in 2011, but it did qualify, but it did not win. But yeah, Diva is sort of it's a prototype of a lot of these very high octane diva choreography pieces that we've seen in Eurovision in recent years. This is the 90s sort of prudish version of it. There's not as much choreography. And the song could certainly use choreography. The live performance that I've seen is the thing that's weighing it down is somewhat the styling and the choreography. But the vocal and the song itself, very strong and very Eurovision. So I think that the anthemic queer nature is going to carry over its iconicness to be memorable, something people remember and think this was a deserving winner, as you know, she pays homage to the great divas of history. So I think a lot of people are going to place Wild Dances in their top 5. And for me to place it all the way down here at 13 probably does feel really cruel. This is, of course, the Ukrainian winning entry from 2004 by Ruslana. Another, mid-2000s high-energy girl bop that slayed the competition. I want to love it, but I do feel like it's messy. More so in the production and the mixing of the track. But I also am not jazzed about her vocals. I gotta be completely honest with you. On the studio or in the live performance. I think it's even worse in the live performance. There's definitely some pitchiness, but then again, she is moving on that stage. It's really hard to keep, pitch and tone when you're doing all of that stuff. So I give her some slack there. Because choreography-wise, most of these entries are nowhere close to the level of energy that she is serving. And I know that a lot of people just want energy from Eurovision, but, to a certain extent, it can get a little bit too much. And I think that Wild Dances could have benefited from being a little more refined in that regard, with the production, with the instrumental choices. I would have liked the ethnic instrumentals to come out stronger rather than being drowned out by synths. I think that's what drags it down for me. If we'd gotten some horns and flutes in there, I think it would baseline that, it would have been a lot stronger.
How many times can we win and lose? How many times can we break the rules between us? Only teardrops. How many times do we have to fight? How many times do we get...
At number 12, Only Teardrops by Emily de Forest, the other Danish winner we have here from the last 30 years in 2013. A safe track for sure, but one that does kind of capture the magic of an escapist Eurovision entry with a decent, competent female vocalist. I wouldn't say she's the most breathtaking vocalist that we have on offer here, but serviceable. I think serviceable is a good way to describe it. I do think the staging is a little bit of a letdown compared to the music video, which is so lush and ethereal. But, the contest has only really started to up the staging in the last 5 to 6 years. It's really been, 5 to 7 years. It really took the contest to get to these kind of heights, where even 10 years ago, it was not what it is now. Now with all the insane LEDs and light choreography that is on display.
Like a satellite, I'm in an orbit all the way around you, and I would fall down into the night. Can't go a minute without your love.
Number 11, we have Satellite by Lena from Germany, Germany's highest big scoring entry to date. Obviously, Germany does not have a good track record at Eurovision in the 21st century, but Lena broke that curse. And this is one of those entries that, again, I didn't follow Eurovision really at all in 2010, but I'm surprised that it did win because it's so quirky and it is kind of, it's not what you would think of as a Eurovision winning song. You know, it doesn't have a stadium filling production. It doesn't have a way that's kind of niche. It's a nicher song. It reminds me of this, I think she's Australian, but she had some pop hits, but they didn't really get that high in the charts. Lenka, but also a bit of Kimbra in there, like these sort of a little bit more indie alternative girls who make pop songs that kind of cross through and they're one-hit wonders. It's giving me that kind of vibe. A little Marie Digby in there as well. I mean, I could see this being very serviceable on the radio in the late 2000s. It definitely fits the landscape of where pop was then. But Satellite is just such a cute song. Again, one of the other big ones that got stuck in my head. And I actually think 2010 is a really strong year for Eurovision. Out of all of the years I've gone back to do research on so far, 2010 has had the most songs that I've fallen in love with from discovering the contest in its older iterations. And so, you know, what I necessarily given it to Satellite, I'm not 100% sure who I would have awarded in 2010 because there was so much quality. But then I also have not watched a lot of the live performances, so I don't really know if I'm judging accurately. I'm judging based on a lot of, you know, MP3 studio cuts. But Satellite winning is totally fine with me because this song is cute and fun and it's different. It's a different kind of niche of pop that isn't really achieved by any of the other songs we have in the 30 here. And number 10, so we come to the top 10. These are songs that are definitely on my phone that I feel most people should listen to. If they're not familiar with Eurovision, I would recommend them check these entries out, so to speak. Molitva by Marija Sarifovic. This is a song that feels very classic Balkan, elegant, soaring off the page melody, and the kind that we do get a dime a dozen of each year from the Balkans at Eurovision, but you know what? There's always got to be one that shines. And so if we have to give the belting Power Ballad Award, it's going to Molitva for me. It is just definitely the right blend of, I mean, it brings that old school flair to Eurovision that we can't completely lose sight of as we get very pop and polished with all of these kind of dance numbers. But we also have on our heels, just slightly above, 2016's entry, 2016 winner from Ukraine, Yamala, 1944. Arguably, Molitva and 1944 are some of the more serious, really like heavy songs that have ever won the contest. And some would argue that 1944 is a little too political for the contest itself. And to be completely honest with you, I'm not entirely sure other countries other than Ukraine could have gotten away with sending an entry like this. You know, in 2016, it was, you know, fresh off of the Crimean annexation, and Ukraine wanted to make a song, send a song that had the world kind of remembering that the history can repeat itself. And Yamala, even if you don't understand the language, translates that to the viewer so hauntingly. And also with the, you know, LEDs, that this was, again, the first year I think LEDs were used to their true potential on stage. There is something magnetic about the way the staging moves with her, as well as the way she presents the story to the listener. It is so emotional. It is so almost feral with pain that it's heavy. It's heavy but good. And definitely jury bait. I'm imagining the jury really did love this entry, but I'm sure the public wanted to give a lot of love to Ukraine as well, not so dissimilar to Ukraine's more recent victory, which was also driven largely by the public, which we'll get to, because of sympathy for what's going on. But I would argue that without that context of the Crimean War, Yamala deserved the win on the song alone. At number 8, we have Heroes by Mons Zemerlo. I think a lot of people would probably put this in the Believe Dima Bilan category, just maybe a little higher, but I have a soft spot for this song because 2015 was the first year that I really looked at Eurovision and listened to a lot of the big heavy-hitting entries. And this song jumped off the page to me when I saw that it had won. Mons is obviously easy on the eyes, but I also loved how they were incorporating the projections and the 3D elements that bring the performance to life, at least through the camera, but I'm sure on stage as well. Having him dance with these animations. And it's just a feel-good, charming, electrifying song that's very elevating in the production. I think it's immaculately produced, so it really can't drag itself down. I think that it's a winning package that Sweden just is often very good at sending when they get it right. And a deserving win. Controversial opinion, but I'm of the camp that A Million Voices by Russia is a really good song. And if it had won in 2015, I wouldn't have been mad about it. But I know that a lot of people wouldn't have liked Russia to have won in the post-Crimean annexation climate that we now find ourselves in. In 2015, Russia having won the Eurovision Song Contest would have been kind of controversial. And I know a lot of people wouldn't have voted for it just for that reason. But I do think A Million Voices is a strong song, regardless of the fact that the singer of that entry has sadly shown herself to be a Putin apologist. So politics aside, phenomenal entry, but do not support the singer and the artist. Sadly. And then at number 7, we have Stefania by Kalush Orchestra. I am certain that there are going to be people who would put this dead last, and it's just really sad that I see that, but I see discourse on Twitter. I see people talking on YouTube, and people are really divided on this one, probably more so than any other entry in Eurovision history on how deserving this one was of the win. The narrative is that the war completely carried the win, and I've talked about it ad nauseum when I was covering 2022 and even 2023, that I do not believe that the war is the sole reason this song won. I believe it is a winning song even out of that context. I just love ethnic folk bops, and I just love the artistry on display. This group is magnetic. It deserved the win. I don't want to hear any more of it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That's all I'm going to say. And then we have also the most recent winner, Tattoo by Loreen, another contentious winner. I mean, I do think every winner is going to be contentious, but people are doing a lot. People are doing a lot. And yeah, I was a Cha-Cha-Cha stan. Well, I wouldn't say stan, but I was team Cha-Cha-Cha to win too. But with time, I'm a grown-up. I can accept that Loreen also deserved it. And we also kind of all knew what was happening. And this is, again, one of those things where, Sweden just knows how to send the right package with the perfect production, stage design, vocals on point. Although I don't love the grand final performance of Loreen, I think she did better in the running up to the final. Maybe it's the audio. It makes me prefer the studio cut than the live performance, but that's a nitpicking thing. It's an iconic song that deserves to be in the top 6.
I am the voice in the wind and the pouring rain. I am the voice of your hunger and pain. I am the voice.
Hitting the top 5. The top 5, this is getting harder to rank because I love all these songs, but it was hard to say which one was stronger than the other. This is how it ultimately crumbled for me. We have Ireland's other 1990s winner from 1996, The Voice by Amar Quinn. This is the most Celtic sounding song that we have on offer here, at least sent from an Irish artist, which is fitting for the Emerald Isle. And it is something that I really wish Ireland would look to in reviving their image at Eurovision. I really feel the Celtic route is the route to go. And The Voice just has all of the things I'm looking for. It has, the like silky vocals of Amar, with just effortless vocal delivery, a hopeful, spiritual undertone. It's a haunting song for sure. And if it doesn't give you goosebumps, there's something wrong. And it's just such an elevated kind of performance. It's really like doing its homework and presenting a true best of the best, in my opinion. That's why I'm giving it all of these points, all of these props.
Meu bem, ouve as minhas preces, peço que regresse.
And similarly, we have at number 4, Portugal's winner from 2017, Amar Dois. I'm not pronouncing that right. I am almost certain. Salvador Sobral, with the most understated ballad that I think has ever won Eurovision. I mean, there's only some light piano, and the rest is just us tuning into the most delicately delivered, wistful vocals that, Eurovision is all about big, even when it's emotional and gravitate, and central like that. But this song just strips it all away, and it does not. I feel like it's going to be a boring song because it's kind of jazzy. Old school jazz is not always my thing, but Salvador, when I listen to it, I remember the gravitational essence it has, like the grounding power it has, the artistry on display musically. And so I have to give it props for it. I really, ultimately, I kind of surprised myself with how high I ended up placing it, but I feel very strongly that this is one of the highest quality entries that I've ever won in the last 30 years. At number 3, we have My Number One by Helena Paparizou from Greece. This is the 2000s ethnic girl bop. I think that it does everything that I wish Wild Dances and Every Way That I Can and I Wanna didn't. It has really polished choreography, a thought through, catchy chorus that services the choreography well, decent styling. Again, it's all a little dated because it's 2005. They could have done more with a revamped image, but that's just what the times gave us. Serving just what we all want to see from pop divas. Like, I know another song of Helena's called Mambo, which is also a bop. And she is a tour de force on the stage and with these ethnic pop songs. So the dancing is just, you can't help but want to dance along. So I think that it definitely, out of all of the dance numbers that we've seen, with barring the one I'm about to talk about, which I don't even call it a dance number because I call it more like an experimental EDM song, but it is dance. Who's at number 2? Oh, you guessed it. It's Euphoria, Loreen's other big win, the only double repeat win on this 30-year list here. Euphoria is stronger than Tattoo. I mean, at first I thought Tattoo might have a more captivating melody, but at the end of the day, the package of Euphoria, I think, is stronger. I think the song is just electrifying. It's dizzyingly. It's built to grab people and to reach heights that kind of are dizzying. I think that, Loreen can do so much with so little on stage, which is really impressive because, it's just her and the lights, and it really feels emotional and serious, even though it is a kind of generic EDM track that's backing it. But it's done right. It's done right. It ticks all the right boxes. So you got to give it to her. I mean, justice for Babushki grandmas. I do think it's interesting that both times Loreen has won, she's won against a sort of left field, but like deeply beloved cult favorite entry. And in 2023, that was Cha 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 with Karia. And in 2012, that was the Russian old lady group of Babushki grandmas. They were sort of like these singing, rapping, like old ladies who got on stage and sang about how it's a party for everybody. And they were basically just like singing about making stew and food for their loved ones when they came home in the winter. It was just, everything I love about Eurovision, because it was so regional, family, and ethnic, so wholesome for all ages, and catchy still, and silly, and like kind of head scratching, all the right things. And I would have loved to have seen them win. I'm sure the public really did vote for them, but ultimately the jury also elevated Euphoria's. I'm sure people loved Euphoria too, but it was the winning combination. So it's interesting how Loreen has that similar story against both of those acts. But coming in at number 1, there was only ever one clear standout for me. And this is a song that I'd at least heard the melody of years ago, but I didn't actually know that it was a cover of a song that had won Eurovision until more recently. The Norwegian/Irish new age group Secret Garden took to the stage in 1995, representing Norway. And they did something that honestly did kind of break the rules, but I think they skirted around it by just having the right amount of vocal. We open with a singer who is not even a part of Secret Garden, a singer who was, invited to perform alongside them, deliver a opening lyric that is beautiful. I mean, in a absolutely breathtaking soprano. And then we let the rest of the melody just be carried away on the fiddle with the harp and the piano. And it is just the most David Arkenstone, Lorena McKennitt sounding ethereal Celtic ballad that you could think of. It is just, it sinks into your skin, and it's a melody that feels timeless. It feels ancient. It feels like the people who made Stonehenge were listening to it. I don't know how sometimes these melodies come through that these really, really talented, particularly like new age or classical songwriters come up with, and they just blow me away, blow everyone away, understandably. I'm so happy this song won. I mean, I definitely think the 90s was more of a fertile ground for a song like this to do well. I think new age definitely was more popular in the 90s than it is today, sadly. And I do think, unfortunately, today a song like this would not probably win. But I'm so glad it did. I'm so glad it did, because this is the Eurovision song for me. Nocturne by Secret Garden. So few lyrics, but very little needed, because the rest is just carried away by the most gorgeous violin music. Yeah, need I say any more? So yeah, those are my 30, that is my ranking of the last 30 years of Eurovision and all of the winners. I feel pretty good about the order. Let me know what you think in the comments. Who would you place in the bottom? What are your least favorite and most favorite songs? Bottom 5, top 5. Let me know. I know I'm wrong with a lot of these placements. I'm sorry. But I hope you did enjoy this video. I'm going to link in the description all my Eurovision content from the last 5 years. So if you want to check out my thoughts on anything from Eurovision 2018 to present, you can check it out down there. And like I said, I am going to make more videos summarizing more past Eurovision contests, but it won't probably go past, 2007, because I don't have time to go back to, there's just too much. Maybe one day, but not anytime soon. But I do want to do I want to do a video at some point where I talk about my favorite entry from each country that has participated in the last 15 years of Eurovision. So I do want to do a video like that at some point, but I wanted to get this out here for now. It's been really interesting looking at the breadth and the genre, the diversity of winners. I'm glad to see there is a lot of diversity in the last 30 years of winners, and I hope we continue to see that. I don't want every winner to sound the same, like it's the same type of music winning over and over again. We need different genres to shine, even if it's a genre that I'm not as big a fan of. I can still see talent and respect it when it's due. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all have a wonderful, blessed day. Please give this a like and subscribe if you are new, and I will see you all in my next video. Peace, love, and light. Bye.